This morning, there are new images of President Trump's police takeover rolling out in the nation's capital. FBI and DEA agents, some wearing masks, bulletproof vests, seen patrolling the streets of Washington, D.C.'s Georgetown neighborhood. And that Trump move is coming all really into clearer focus. Just as it is becoming into clearer focus, it's also raising new questions of which city is next. So first to D.C., the National Guard were seen at the Washington Monument. As well, we've also seen law enforcement personnel with the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Marshal Service taking part in traffic stops, and U.S. border agents on patrol at D.C.'s Union Station, the major hub for train travel there. All of this part of the president's crime crackdown, he says, in that city, a city he's tried to portray as being overrun by criminals, despite, again, the statistics and what the math and numbers say, which is the city has seen a 26% drop in violent crime from this time last year. With hundreds of federal law enforcement now on the streets of D.C., the FBI says 23 arrests were made overnight. And according to the FBI director, FBI agents were involved in nearly half of those arrests. CNN's Elena Treen is at the White House for us this morning, and a very different day it is this morning. What are you hearing today?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Kate, we have now really seen this ramped up presence of federal law enforcement in the streets and really at these high trafficked tourist spots. That is what we're hearing from our conversations with people here at the White House, where they want these federal law enforcement agents to be focused. So you mentioned we saw the National Guard. We actually saw 5 armored personal carriers near the Washington Monument on Tuesday evening. This comes out to the National Guard came in on Tuesday, but then of course you showed those images of people in the streets in Georgetown and all of these areas that we know where there's a lot of traffic, not necessarily though the areas we know where crime is the highest, places like Anacostia and others. And we've heard some criticism of that approach. So we're going to have to see really how this all continues over the next 30 days, because that is another key question, of course, is how long are we actually going to see this, and how effective is this going to be, this entire federal takeover? We know that the president has until mid-September. After that point, the White House has said that they are going to reevaluate what this process looks like. And of course, after that as well, he would need congressional approval to move forward. But a key thing that they're going to be analyzing as well throughout that time period, again, is how successful is this? Because the key question is whether or not this is actually going to end up being a model for some of these other cities we know that the president has mentioned, places like Baltimore, where we did hear the governor of Maryland say that he believes that this move is not necessarily, it's dangerous and it could lead to problems, but also cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, all of that's still unclear as we watch how this ends up playing out over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, not mincing words on what he thinks about it, also having served himself. D.C.'s mayor, she has been watched very closely on how this is rolled out. She's in a different position than other mayors are, given D.C.'s status. A lot of talk about how diplomatic and careful she had been in talking about this move by the president and the administration. Seems to be shifting a bit, though.
I think that's exactly right. She's been treading very carefully. She's been very careful with her rhetoric. We've really seen that over the last week. I mean, when the president first announced that he had plans to do some of this, or even just wanting to bring in some federal law enforcement in the first place, it took her 5 days initially before she actually spoke out about it. And then even after he had made this announcement on Monday saying that he was going to be using the D.C. Home Rule Act to really have this takeover with federal agents, she still tried to argue that perhaps, it might be good to see people in the streets, while also noting that this move was unprecedented. But then yesterday, she did change her tone a bit. Listen to what she said.
We all need to do what we can in our space, in our lane, to protect our city and get to the other side of this guy and make sure we elect a Democratic House so that we have a backstop to this authoritarian push.
So you heard her saying have a backstop to this authoritarian push, which she's arguing that the president has been doing here, and also saying that they need to have a change in Congress to make sure that this could potentially be prevented in the future. All to say, very different language than we've heard in recent days, Kate.
A market shift, that's for sure. All right, Elena, great to see you. Thanks for starting us off.
Joining me now in the group chat, Garrett Graff returns. He's a journalist and historian. Lulu Garcia-Navarro, CNN contributor and New York Times journalist, and Doug Heye, Republican strategist. Good morning to you all. Good morning. Doug, I'm going to start with you because I'm sure your group chats are lit with all the winning that is happening. But it is very much, as you could hear from the response, hitting a nerve. So what do you think of how the president has approached this?
Well, first, it's a very different tone that we're hearing from Mayor Bowser today and yesterday than we did just a couple of days earlier. You know, she is one of the I think one of the smartest operators in Washington, D.C., in how she's been trying to navigate these waters with Donald Trump, given the role that the federal government has with D.C., not just over the past week, but over the past several months. Clearly, Donald Trump feels, though, that this issue of crime, and I think Republicans writ large, it's terra firma for them. Whenever they can talk about being tough on crime, they're really where they want to be. And D.C. is ripe for these issues. You know, obviously, the Capitol Mall, the National Mall is a safe place. Nobody really gets in any trouble there.
I mean, not obvious from the imagery, but yeah, now it is.
But if you walk in the mall, whether it's today or 2 weeks ago, you feel safe. You go in different neighborhoods and you start to feel less safe very quickly. 3 blocks from here is Union Station, where I unfortunately encountered a girl brawl at the metro stop just 2 weeks ago. And the things that I see at Union Station and smell at Union Station every day, every week, are troubling. And it's one of those things that allows Donald Trump to send this signal that he can. The thing I would say, while I don't like Donald Trump always finding something to declare an emergency that, by the way, always increases his powers, what a shock. If you want to solve this, one of the fastest things you can do is appoint judges, because the backlog that we have on prosecutions
I want to bring in the others here, because you're bringing up a good point that this is about 2 things at once. How does crime exist? How bad is it? One question. What should you do about it? What's legal or just, et cetera, is another question. And I think Democrats are struggling answering.
I think that's true. I also think this tells us a lot about the dynamics inside the Trump administration, which is this is an incredible misuse of federal resources in terms of the deployment of having, FBI agents, DEA agents, Border Patrol agents walking beats in the city, which is something they're not trained to do. They don't have the equipment to do. They don't even have the legal powers to do. I mean, one of the things is a lot of these federal agents don't actually have the powers to do the things that the Metropolitan Police does here. And so it's interesting to me that someone like Kash Patel, the FBI director, is unwilling to say, actually, I have a really good plan for addressing crime in D.C. Let me surge agents to a violent crime task force, to a fugitive task force, to a gang task force, and let the FBI agents do the things that they're supposed to do. And he's willing to let his agents be compromised for a political stunt.
I want to say that the police chief is tried to clarify the issue of just chain of command, who's in charge if you get, arrested in the district. Here they are answering that.
Are you answering to Terry Cole?
I answer to I answer to Mayor Muriel Bowser. And here, let me just say this: let us not have any controversy with that, okay? Because I know people want to build upon and create division. We're here to work together with our federal partners, and that's what we're going to do.
We live in the dumbest timeline to say what the kids say. The fact that we have a president who is deploying federal forces on the streets of their capital city and meeting with their enemies for a listening tour, I'm talking about Vladimir Putin, shows how unserious this is to tackle what is, of course, a problem in every city across the world where you have many, many people together. There's always going to be crime. When you're talking about girl brawls, which I've seen too, we should have maybe better social media policies and better money for schools, not take away $1 billion from the D.C. budget, instead give money to schools to help children. And I'll also say that I live in D.C. in a historically black neighborhood, and last night night, you know, there were helicopters whirring over my head. I'm a former war correspondent. I've spent many years in conflict, and I never thought that this would be something that I would feel in an American city, other than, of course, on January 6th, which was, of course, as we know, the biggest episode of crime in the city. You know, D.C. is a city where last year alone it had the highest rates of tourism. I think historically over 24 million people came to this city. People did not feel unsafe. And so this is a solution without the kind of problem that Donald Trump and his administration is presenting it as.